Nero. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus /Nero/Nero, born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, December 15, AD 37 to 9 June AD 68, was a Roman emperor and the final emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, reigning from AD 54 until his death in AD 68. Nero was born at Antium in AD 37, the son of Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus and Agrippina the Younger, great-granddaughter of the Emperor Augustus. Nero was 3 when his father died. By the time Nero turned 11, his mother married Emperor Claudius, who then adopted Nero as his heir. Upon Claudius' death in AD 54, Nero ascended to the throne with the backing of the Praetorian Guard and the Senate. In the early years of his reign, Nero was advised and guided by his mother Agrippina, his tutor Seneca the Younger, and his Praetorian prefect Sextus Afranius Burrus, but sought to rule independently and rid himself of restraining influences. The power struggle between Nero and his mother reached its climax when he orchestrated her murder. Roman sources also implicate Nero in the deaths of both his wife Claudia Octavia, supposedly so he could marry Poppaea Sabina, and his stepbrother Britannicus. Nero's practical contributions to Rome's governance focused on diplomacy, trade, and culture. He ordered the construction of amphitheaters and promoted athletic games and contests. He made public appearances as an actor, poet, musician, and charioteer, which scandalized his aristocratic contemporaries as these occupations were usually the domain of slaves, public entertainers, and infamous persons. However, the provision of such entertainments made Nero popular among lower-class citizens. The costs involved were borne by local elites either directly or through taxation, and were much resented by the Roman aristocracy. During Nero's reign, the general Corbulo fought the Roman-Parthian War of 58 to 63 and made peace with the hostile Parthian Empire. The Roman general Suetonius Paulinus quashed a major revolt in Britain led by Queen Boudica. The Bosporan kingdom was briefly annexed to the empire, and the First Jewish-Roman War began. When the Roman senator Vindex rebelled, with support from the eventual Roman emperor Galba, Nero was declared a public enemy and condemned to death in absentia. He fled Rome, and on June 9 AD 68 committed suicide. His death sparked a brief period of civil war known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Most Roman sources offer overwhelmingly negative assessments of his personality and reign. Most contemporary sources describe him as tyrannical, self-indulgent, and debauched. The historian Tacitus claims the Roman people thought him compulsive and corrupt. Suetonius tells that many Romans believed the Great Fire of Rome was instigated by Nero to clear land for his planned Golden House. Tacitus claims Nero seized Christians as scapegoats for the fire and had them burned alive, seemingly motivated not by public justice, but personal cruelty. Some modern historians question the reliability of ancient sources on Nero's tyrannical acts, considering his popularity among the Roman commoners. In the eastern provinces of the empire, a popular legend arose that Nero had not died and would return. After his death, at least 3 leaders of short-lived, failed rebellions presented themselves as Nero reborn to gain popular support. In Jewish and Christian tradition, an Aggadah in the Talmud says that at the end of AD 66, conflict broke out between Greeks and Jews in Jerusalem and Caesarea. According to the Talmud, during the Great Jewish Revolt, Nero went to Jerusalem and shot arrows in all 4 directions. All the arrows landed in the city. He then asked a passing child to repeat the verse he had learned that day. The child responded, "I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel." Ezekiel 25 verse 14. Upon hearing this, Nero became terrified, believing that God wanted the Second Temple to be destroyed, but that he would punish the one to carry it out. Nero said, "He desires to lay waste his house and to lay the blame on me," whereupon he fled and converted to Judaism to avoid such retribution. Vespasian was then dispatched to put down the rebellion. The Talmud adds that the sage Reb Meir Baal Hanes lived in the time of the Mishnah and was a prominent supporter of the Bar Kokhba rebellion against Roman rule. Rabbi Meir was considered one of the greatest of the Tanaim of the 3rd generation, 139 to 163. According to the Talmud, He was a descendant of Nero, who had converted to Judaism. His wife Bruria is one of the few women cited in the Gemara. He is the third most frequently mentioned sage in the Mishnah. Citation needed. The Talmudic legend about Nero is not supported by contemporary sources. Roman and Greek sources nowhere report Nero's alleged trip to Jerusalem or his alleged conversion to Judaism. There is also no record of Nero having any offspring who survived infancy. His only recorded child, Claudia Augusta, died aged 4 months. Christian tradition. Tacitus describes Nero extensively torturing and executing Christians after the fire of AD 64. Suetonius also mentions Nero punishing Christians, though he does so because they are given to a new and mischievous superstition and does not connect it with the fire. Christian writer Tertullian, c. 155–230, was the first to call Nero the first persecutor of Christians. He wrote, "Examine your records. There you will find that Nero was the first that persecuted this doctrine." Lactantius, c. 240–320, also said that Nero first persecuted the servants of God, as did Sulpicius Severus. However, Suetonius writes that, since the Jews constantly made disturbances at the instigation of Chrestus, the Emperor Claudius expelled them from Rome. Iudio simpulsor Cresto assidua tumultuantis Roma expulit. These expelled Jews may have been early Christians, although Suetonius is not explicit. Nor is the Bible explicit, calling Aquila of Pontus and his wife, Priscilla, both expelled from Italy at the time, Jews. Acts 18 verse 2. Martyrdoms of Peter and Paul. The first text to suggest that Nero ordered the execution of an apostle is a letter by Clement to the Corinthians traditionally dated to around AD 96. The apocryphal Ascension of Isaiah, a Christian writing from the 2nd century, says, "The slayer of his mother, who himself, even this king, will persecute the plant which the 12 apostles of the Beloved have planted. Of the 12 one will be delivered into his hands." This is interpreted as referring to Nero. Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, c. 275–339, was the first to write explicitly that Paul was beheaded and Peter crucified in Rome during the reign of Nero. He states that Nero's persecution led to Peter and Paul's deaths, but that Nero did not give any specific orders. However, several other accounts going back to the 1st century of Paul surviving his 2 years in Rome and traveling to Hispania before facing trial in Rome again prior to his death. Peter is first said to have been crucified specifically upside down in Rome during Nero's reign, but not by Nero, in the apocryphal Acts of Peter, c. 200. The account ends with Paul still alive and Nero abiding by God's command not to persecute any more Christians. By the 4th century, a number of writers were stating that Nero killed Peter and Paul. Antichrist. Main articles: Antichrist, the Beast, Revelation, Number of the Beast, and Nero Redivivus legend. The Sibylline Oracles, Book 5 and 8, written in the 2nd century, speak of Nero returning and bringing destruction. Within Christian communities, these writings, along with others, fueled the belief that Nero would return as the Antichrist. In 310, Lactantius wrote that Nero suddenly disappeared, and even the burial place of that noxious wild beast was nowhere to be seen. This has led some persons of extravagant imagination to suppose that, having been conveyed to a distant region, he is still reserved alive, and to him they apply the Sibylline verses. Lactantius maintains that it is not right to believe this. In 422, Augustine of Hippo wrote about 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 1–11, where he believed that Paul mentioned the coming of the Antichrist. Although he rejects the theory, Augustine mentions that many Christians believed Nero was the Antichrist or would return as the Antichrist. He wrote that, in saying, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work," he alluded to Nero, whose deeds already seem to be as the deeds of Antichrist. Some modern biblical scholars, such as Delbert Hillers, Johns Hopkins University, of the American Schools of Oriental Research, and the editors of the Oxford Study Bible and HarperCollins Study Bible, contend that the number 666 in the Book of Revelation is a code for Nero, a view that is also supported in Roman Catholic biblical commentaries. The statement concerns Revelation 17 verses 1 to 18, the longest explanatory passage in Revelation, which predicts the destruction of Rome by work of an eighth emperor, who is also one of the 7 kings of the most extended and powerful empire ever known in the human history. According to this lecture, Babylon the Great is identified with Rome, which has poured the blood of saints and martyrs. Verse 6, and subsequently become the seat of the Vatican State, reigning over all the kings existing on earth.